Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today is February 13th, and this is our another SIG CLI bi-weekly meeting. Let me quickly share my screen and hope that the binary works. Okay, you should see the agenda, hopefully. So I don't have any particular announcements. So let's quickly jump to the test grid. I'm not sure if, oh yeah, Ibrahim's here. Can you give us a little bit update on the test grid and how the testing were looking in the past 2 weeks?
Hello,
Ibrahim, you're there?
I still have issues with my microphone. Let me first fix that.
Okay, we can hear you clear.
Oh, nice. Okay. So we majorly had one issue with the test grid, which was the failing test from AWS. I later figured out that it was a funding issue, and someone SPPF, someone with that handle, had created someone created an issue for that, and I don't know when it will get fixed, but I'm still watching, and that particular test is still failing to date. Other than that, it was pretty much a breeze for every other test.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much. The next on call will be Sean. And quick reminder, if you're willing to sign up for the test on-call role, there's a SIG CLI testing playbook document. We have spots starting from the next time slot all over through March, April, and further. Feel free to add yourself there. If you have any questions with regards what are the duties, how it works, how much actually work it is, feel free to reach out to any of us on Slack or directly, and we will be more than happy to give you an overview what are the duties. Okay, so let's move then, in that case, on to the main topics. And the first one is Liang Fang with kubectl apply prune.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Sure, let me stop sharing. Now you should be able to share your screen.
Cool. So we have an issue open for better apply prune. So prune is a flag in kubectl apply, and it is still in alpha. It has been in alpha for more than a year, as I know. And this is something we want to do for several months. And Phil and Jeff and Sean have mentioned this a lot of times. So this is currently a gap in kubectl. And if we can fix that, and it will help a lot of people in their workflow. So after discussing with many people, I opened, did I share my screen? Sorry. So this is the issue I just mentioned. And after discussing with many people, I wrote a cap, which is this one. And it has been open for about 1 week, so not this one. This one has been open for about 1 week, and I did modify some of its content. So, there are already many people giving comments, and I address some of those comments. So the current design is basically based on a concept called apply config object. So let me briefly go through what that new approach is. Sorry, what I'm doing. I want to present. Can you see these slides?
Yes.
Okay. So here is our motivation. We consider a kubectl apply on a directory. So let's say at first our cluster is clean. It doesn't have any full bar objects deployed. So let's say in our directory we have full and bar objects, and when we run kubectl apply on that directory, the full bar objects will be created on the API server. And then later someone just comes, say, I want to remove the bar object, and I create a baz object in that directory. And by kubectl apply -- prune, I'm hoping that the object bar in a cluster will be removed, and the object baz will be created on the cluster. So the final state on the cluster is we have object full and object baz, which can match the directory files or the configuration in the directories. And this is the motivation, and this is the workflow we want to support by kubectl apply -- prune. And now let's see what is the current state. And this is the alpha prune. It is it supports a -L, which is a label selector. And when you give that label selector, it will query all the objects, cross all resources and namespaces to find the matching ones. And among the matching ones, it will select the objects that has the last apply annotations, so that those objects are created by a previous apply. And then for any objects that is with that last apply configuration, but not shown up in the new apply set, those objects will be deleted. So the limitation are mainly from two parts. One is that it's not efficient since it has many number of queries. And second one is pretty risky. So users have to be really careful when they use this feature to make sure that they don't delete any objects unintentionally. Let's say if they have a typo in this command line, or this label has some overlaps with some other directories, the objects on the cluster might be deleted without user attention. So we don't want that kind of disaster happen. So this is our new approach. It is based on a concept called apply config object. So here is an example of such object. It has a label, which is kubectl kubernetes.io/apply config. Oops, it's true. And based on this label, we say this object is a config apply object. And it also has the information of a list of objects that will be applied to the cluster. So here we call that list of objects is saved in the last apply objects annotation. Here, for example, we have 3 objects which are to be applied to the cluster. And something we need to note is that this apply config object is not generated by kubectl itself. It should be generated by other tools, such as Customize or Helm, or even other tools, or user can create this object manually. They just need to add this label and add this annotation correctly to match whatever resources present in files or directories. Okay, so here let's see with this apply config object, the new workflow. So let's say in a directory, I have a apply config object. I have full bar. The first time I run apply for this whole directory, so kubectl will see there is a apply config object by this label, apply config true by this label. And then since the cluster is empty, it's the first time of applying this directory. So it couldn't find an apply config in the cluster. So kubectl will go ahead and create that object as well as full bar in the cluster. And now let's say the directory is modified. We removed bar and we add badge. At the same time, the apply config object need to be updated. So as you can see, now we have full bar in the annotation. We have full badge in the annotation instead of full bar. So this time when kubectl sees the directory, it will first fetch the apply config object from the cluster, which is the yellow one. If you look at, that's the live object for apply config. So there, the last apply object has the list as full bar, but in the new apply config object, we have the list of objects as full badge. So those two sets are different, and kubectl will compute the difference of those two sets and create the new resource, which is badge, and delete the old resources, which is bar. Okay. And then update the cluster. Okay. So this is the final state of the cluster. We have full, maybe updated, but bar is deleted and badge is created, and apply config object on the in the cluster is also updated. And now this live object has the same content as the apply config object from the directory. So that's the new workflow from the CAP. Any questions, comments?
Well, if nobody else does, I've got questions. I may have missed this, but why is the apply CFG, is it a label instead of an annotation? Is there a reason? Labels are usually used when we have to query things, and I might be missing something here.
We add this. I don't think we couldn't use annotation. So this information is just to let kubectl know it is a apply config object. I think using either label or annotation works.
One reason that we might want to use a label is if a user wants to go find like all of these things, to be able to query like show me the config maps. I don't know if that's a strong enough reason that is there.
That would be a good reason there, because the labels provide querying.
Along the same vein of questions that Matt was presenting, the annotations, if this is going in a config map, why make it an annotation instead of just like the data and make like, or why not like make a type, like a structure that has this as a field and then encoding it in the body of the config map?
At first,
I haven't read the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
At first, I use data to save the list of resources, and then we realized there might be some other cases we want to support. For example, people may want to use other CRD kind of resource as the apply config object, and if we allowed to add annotation as the in the annotation, we can add the list of resources, then other types will be also supported. So this apply config object is not limited to only config map kind. So other kind of objects can also be recognized as apply config object as long as they have this label. And the list of resources could be found from the annotation. If we save that list of resources in data field is not available in many other type of resources.
So Ken Owens had mentioned that one of the objects that might make sense as the apply config object would be the app CRD. And I think he was concerned, he was hoping, if I could speak for him, to have the ability to have the app CRD be this apply config object.
Yeah, and as somebody who works with Ken on this stuff, if this is put into kube control, it means that other tools can't take advantage of it, right? Because they'd have to shell out to kube control, or they would have to import its libraries, which means they're going to be a Go app. But if it works with something like the application CRD, then that is a CRD in controller, and a lot of tools can then go use that. And I think that kind of cross compatibility is important in pushing things like this server side. I also think, to add to it, that this kind of gets into a little bit of dependency management and resolution. And I know when we discussed application in the original KEP for it, before we were doing KEPs for everything, and this was talked about, that was a hot button topic, because dependency resolution for people who've been trying to do this, it turns out to be a hard problem. And there's a little bit of debate on how we should do it. So on the application controller side, it's kind of been, let's slowly step into these as we learn more about it. And that has been one of the harder nuts to talk about and to do well. And so that's one of the reasons it's not even there yet, because what's the right way to do it? You'll find that people who've been doing it, like the folks who worked on Tiller, have learned a lot of opinions over time, and they realize that sometimes there's different ways to do things, and people debate it. And so what do we bake in here? And so I would be very cautious in chasing after this way because of those two things.
So I think the dependency management is a different set of problem. So since that problem could be handled by other tools, and kubectl is kind of not own that kind of problem. And so what we want to provide by this new prune approach is to given the ability for other tools to use this prune. So if they, so regardless of how they manage the dependency, how they generate their resources. So as long as they have, as long as they have this apply config object, kubectl can handle the pruning action correctly.
That assumes they use kubectl, and more people want to be able to use other tools, which means it doesn't work interoperably. It always assumes kubectl is here. So if somebody's writing a tool that uses one of the Kubernetes clients, like the JavaScript client, they would not be able to work with this because they'd have to go through kubectl.
Yeah, they can't work with it now. The prune is it's currently in kubectl now. Just to get back to a little bit of the motivation for the prune. So any CI/CD system that is going to continually apply a set of objects is going to need a prune, which was kind of the motivation and why it was put into kubectl, over a year ago. The current, as Jinfeng mentioned, the current implementation doesn't work. So I don't think the question is whether or not we're going to put prune in, because I think that, that it's already in as alpha. The question is how we're going to approach it. And the current, as we mentioned, the current implementation doesn't work.
Yeah. So there's a couple like ways of talking about this. Like, one is apply needs to be able to delete objects. I don't think there's any debate about that. It can create and update objects, but it can't delete them. Seems like a odd place to be in. And we know that there was the intention there because we did implement it. We just implemented it in a way that we knew was bad, but we had to do as an expediency for plugin or add-ons. So actually, Kubernetes itself uses apply to manage add-ons and uses apply prune to delete them, just in a way that's not so great.
So
I agree with the server-side pieces. I think we have to, like, unfortunately, the Kubernetes API doesn't provide like many, doesn't provide a great way of doing cross-resource APIs. There's not a lot of them. The application CRD is kind of in this vein. I don't think this is something we can wait like 2 or 3 years on. I don't know. Go ahead.
And I agree with that, Phil. I guess what I'm thinking of is there an approach that can be done that allows for tool interoperability? Right? So Helm doesn't use kube control. And so if it goes to do stuff and it does pruning and then now it starts not interoperating with this, it's an interoperability problem. And so I'm just approaching my thoughts on this in that way. How do we make this, is there another way to do it that is better for interoperability? I guess that's my question.
Maybe, so there's a couple ways we could make this interoperable. Like the logic isn't radical. We're talking about doing a set difference and deleting everything from one set, right? Read a config map, given 2 config maps, subtract one from the other, then delete those objects, and then write the config map back. So like one level of interoperability could be, here is the approach we are going to use based on config maps. It's kind of a standard approach. The code is pretty small. And then we could like develop per language libraries. Like I think developing this in like 4 libraries, like Go, JavaScript, Java, and Python would probably be less work than like trying to develop a server-side solution that doesn't quite fit right now. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Alternatives?
I'm also thinking about the edge cases on this. Does anybody know, I can't remember offhand how big the value can be in an annotation?
Annotations can be pretty big because we store the last applied config in an annotation, which is literally the entire object. So I think it can be as big as.
Okay. I was thinking of edge cases, such as the people who deploy OpenStack into Kubernetes and the sheer number of objects they have when they do it, how big something like that would get. I'm also wondering if this is the right, if doing it in an annotation is the right way to approach this.
Yeah, I wonder myself. I had the same question.
Like, I'm not disagreeing with the ability to prune. I totally know it needs to be there. I'm just trying to think of a better way for that interface to be than an annotation.
Well,
yeah, I agree that
keeping it as an annotation just makes it comfortable with what we already do, as Phil mentioned, with the last applied object. That's coming up with something different would, I don't know, somehow make it even more or less interoperable with the previous kubectl applied.
What does customize do when it needs to delete a field or something? I remember that was a discussion.
You mean apply? Sorry, not to interrupt.
Customize. Does
When it needs
customize
to
do
delete
with
a field?
removing a field when you do an overlay? Like if there's a label, removing a label?
It sets it to empty.
Okay.
I mean, I think your question is, how does the user express that operation?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it through to empty. It doesn't do omission, which means it can't. There's certain things it can't delete. Because there's no way to set them to nil.
Okay. No, that's fine. Again, I'm just doing a little on the spot brainstorming on this because the annotations approach is not something I like from an interoperability standpoint. This might be worth also taking to SIG architecture just to see if some of the folks there have another idea on a way to express this.
Yeah, Clayton's weighed in on it. We could pull in Jordan. like pulling in specific folks who
Yeah.
probably like it's really the folks from API machinery and SIG apps that are going to have the context for this, right?
Yeah.
I was actually curious how this applies, especially that Antoine is on the line and is commenting, how this applies to the server-side apply. Is there any server-side apply pruning planned? I'm not sure if we ever discussed what will happen with the client-side apply when the server-side apply reaches beta, at least, because it is currently being merged into as alpha, if I remember correctly.
So the server-side apply handles only one object. The handling an aggregation of objects is not in their scope.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what this keeps coming back to, is there's no great APIs, or there's not like an endpoint that's a meta endpoint.
Yeah, I remember. It was discussed several times, even to a point where we would want to have, I don't know, some kind of a templatey object that would express any kind of object, and nothing like that come to fruition.
So, and just to refresh the context, I think this is a provisional cap, right?
Yes.
So it could, one thing we could do is I think it would make sense to at least merge a cap that says like apply needs to be able to delete objects and summarize the conversation so far and some of the trade-offs and challenges without proposing a specific solution. I mean, I think we should be able to merge that without a lot of debate. And then the specifics of the solution, I think we're going to need to pull in folks from API machinery and specifically see if there's anything we haven't thought of with respect to making this server side some way.
Well, you kind of need at least one suggested solution so that you can, hang your conversation on it.
Yeah, maybe this is that. This is the suggested solution, which is we're asking for alternatives. I think like this doesn't close the door necessarily on server side prune either necessarily. Like this is like we could launch this as alpha again, and it would be a lot better than our existing alpha. Is one path forward. Like I think we need to weigh.
I would like generally starting this discussion as improvement because we know the previous mechanism is completely broken. Starting with this as an alpha, getting feedback from SIG architecture, and most importantly, SIG API machinery. And then if they don't object or they like the idea or will be supportive of the idea, you can actually even migrate it to beta within 1.15, because if I remember correctly, that was the targeted version. So that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'd also like to run it through SIG apps. We'll actually bring it in and discuss it in a meeting in there because we deal with all of the workloads and the applications in there and those changes. This has practical implications there. So I'm happy to take it over there to see whether we can come up with any ideas.
Yep. And June's been working, both June and Ken actually have been pulled into the conversation directly.
One thing to keep in mind too is that it's not just apps. You want to be able to prune objects that have, like policies, for example.
Or any resource, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, no, part of the reason I also suggest apps is some of the other tools have done some of the pruning, and I haven't looked at how they've done it, but some of the other tools that interact with the Kubernetes API have dealt with pruning before, and they may just have some practical experience.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. Like, I think Helm is written in Go. I think there's a lot of tools that are written in Go. Like, if we could produce this as a library, at least to the tools that are written in Go, and say, look, it's a best effort attempt to providing this functionality is sort of compromise might be a good way to go. And we might be able to, like, I know Helm implemented Prüm, so if they want to share their experience and then tell us maybe how they would do it again today, and then maybe we could implement it and then provide it as a library, and then everybody gets the same.
We have the CLI runtime, which
right
would be a perfect fit for that one.
Cool. That sounds like a great next steps. Maybe Jingfang, you and June could present it together.
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right. I think there's
Awesome.
another item on the agenda.
Yeah, there are a couple of them still. So let's move on to Seth with the customized secret generators plugins, Kep.
Yeah, I don't have any slides or anything. Just the general idea is that Customize used to have the ability to execute commands in the secret generator. And you could, like, let's say you're using SOPs to encrypt some files. It could, it could execute SOPs and decrypt those files for you. And it was taken out because of basically someone could ship a remote customized setup that will execute some, something on your computer and, some sort of malicious command. So the idea over here is to use Go plugins to supply, like, the functionality to, to hook into SOPs or, any other secret management tool. And it would kind of enforce an API, all right, where you give it an array of arguments and it gives you back an array of key value pairs. And then also you wouldn't be able to ship a plugin as part of your customization files. It would have to live in, like, your root directory somewhere in, like, root customized plugins or something. So you wouldn't be able to ship it, and you wouldn't be able to execute any arbitrary command.
Yeah, I think, and I'll reiterate, I have two concerns about it. The one I did earlier, but I'll put on again on the record here, is the Windows support. The plugins, they came out in Go 1.8, and they didn't then, and they still don't have Windows support. And I know while we don't do a great job of testing with Windows today, we do have a fair amount of people who do use it with Windows. And they're probably just this big silent group that stuff works well enough. My other concern with it, and I don't know that this has been fixed, but with plugin development, when you create plugins, everybody who does it has to have the same path from the root of the file system for the plugin to work. So, like, I'm on a Mac, and if I have /user /my username /go / the path to it, that doesn't work because /user /my username is unique to my system. And that was one of the other problems with it. So if I passed it off to Phil and he's on a Mac, /user /his username, it's a different path. And so there is an interoperability and development problem with that as well. That's a pain point when you're building plugins. And so those two things make me question using the built-in plugin support.
So to that second point, we weren't planning on shipping or managing plugins. It was more of the ability for users to add their own, plugin libraries and use it on their own.
Sure, but people tend to share this stuff on GitHub and co-develop it, right? And that model is then broken because you have to have the same from root. And so those people who want to develop and open source their plugins, like the SOPs, I wouldn't expect everybody who uses SOPs to develop a plugin. I would probably expect one SOPs plugin. Heck, I might use it because I use SOPs for some things. But if I produce it and somebody else wants to go hack on it, our root path isn't the same. And so that creates a sharing problem when you want to do it that way.
Okay. I mean, you could build it to Docker to get around that, I guess.
So everybody who did it would have to do all their development in Docker then, and you'd have to go set up that build toolchain. All of this raises the barrier to entry, which I think is one of the reasons plugins have not really taken off that plugins package. All right, I'll cede to Phil. I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. Kubecontrol has plugins, right? Could we just say kubecontrol plugins is how you do it, maybe? Is that sufficient?
So basically just prefixing your binaries?
Like saying, like saying that, think the way kubectl plugins works is you install like a plugin, you install the command with a certain name and a certain path.
You don't care about the path. You basically drop your binary inside of your path, and that just works, and has to have kubectl dash prefix, and that's basically it. I'm not sure if
Macha and then Matt.
I'm not sure that kind of functionality like we want to have here makes sense for applying the same mechanism for this. This is very simplistic.
So I didn't mean.
I definitely think that the Go plugins is something that will be solved sooner than later. Not sure how broad the Go developers scope is on Windows, and how fast we can get to the point where Go modules will be supportable. I don't want to stop us from doing stuff the right way, because I'm pretty sure this is the right way to do stuff. That's how I've been using similar. I've been solving similar problems in the past, just by using a library. So that seems somewhat reasonable. I'll be curious also maybe figuring out whether the Go plugins are capable of working with regular libraries built, I don't know, in different languages. I don't know. Yeah, like I said before.
Yeah, so the Go plugins, they haven't moved a lot since they came out in 1.8, and so that's one of the reasons that I don't know that I would expect them to move unless somebody else has some other information on what's going on over there. I just haven't seen much movement on it, and a bunch of us had talked about how do we do this and solve this problem before we looked into this, and quite frankly, it doesn't look like it's moved since then. Somebody says plugin, that's Go modules. Go modules is different than plugins. So if folks are talking about Go modules, that's basically dependency management. It's a replacement for DApp or GoDApps or Glide or any of those things. It doesn't solve your plugin problem of having a separate binary released. It's tangential to that.
So Matt, I think that you may be slightly behind the times. We've re-implemented plugins in 1.11 that, as we mentioned before, just any executable in the path, so they could be implemented in any language.
I think he's talking about
no.
Go
I'm
plugins.
talking about Go plugins, not kubectl plugins. Because the proposal here is to use Go plugins, not kubectl plugins. Because yes, using any executable in the path, I think is a fine method. In fact, so what Helm did, because I think what kubectl does is a little different. What Helm actually has inside is it has a couple of hook points where it says, we have this event. We'll look at the metadata from that event, and from that, we'll actually know which external binary to call. You can intercept this stuff along the way. And so you could write those in any language. And one of them for Helm is downloaders. If you see S3:// excuse me, it actually knows to call it to the S3 plugin if you have it, and use that to go fetch something. And so we have that event capability. I don't know if that kind of model might work here as well, because then you could write plugins in any language. You know, someone who does SOPs could write it in Python or shell script or whatever. And it still has the ability to intercept those events along the way and transform things. That might be a model that works and doesn't break the Go plugin model like it does. All right, I see you.
Jeff, yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, thanks. So there's a lot more stuff to talk about in a meeting. This is just a provisional KEP, and it's meant to unblock people who were actually using the exec feature that as it existed in Customize before. So I think it'd be pretty non-controversial to put in a, to let this thing go to implementable, because it could use it could use kubectl plugins. And all it does, the scope of this is extremely constrained to just providing an executable that runs, provides some key value pairs only in the context of creating a secret. We could just cut it off and see how it works.
Does that reintroduce any security concerns?
You're not, the security concern in the original approach was the customization file could actually have a command in it that would run. So the command was textually in the customization file that you could download from the internet. In this case, what the customization file would specify is a local executable, like a local plugin. So the risk would be, the attack would be, is that you would provide someone else with a customization file that they'd be downloading and running remotely. And then the victim would have to have the right plugin installed. And the worst thing that could happen is that it would provide a key value pair. So it's not running arbitrary commands. The person who installed the plugin, it's up to them not to install some evil plugin. I mean, there's only so much you can do. You always, if you want to provide somebody with the ability to generate a secret, somehow some code has to execute, and the person who's doing this has to make a choice as to what code they install. There's no more security risk here than there already is in kubectl plugins as they currently stand.
Yeah, I think just to quickly summarize, what I heard you say was that in the old model, the customize would actually, if it saw the file, it would go out, fetch something, and install it. And so somebody may not realize that the external tool is doing this. In the new model, somebody who runs this has to opt in to go get a plugin that supports it, and the metadata helps you figure it out. No?
No, it doesn't install. Neither case installs any plugins or any executable. You would have to already have an executable in place. What was happening before is you download a customization file that had a command in it that would run. The command may or may not exist in your program that's on your computer. That's up to you. Anyway, I'm afraid we're running out of time for the other stuff that's going to happen in the meeting here. We only have 15 minutes left.
Yeah, my only pushback was on the Go plugins, because I think Go plugins is probably not a good model to go down if you want Windows support and if you want to be able to have multiple people hack on them. And it's just a criticism of using Go plugins here. The idea here makes sense to me.
All right, cool.
Seth, any final thoughts before we move on?
If I'm going to implement this, do we move forward with Go plugins, or should I do the kubectl model?
Can you spend some time and try to figure out what is the current state of Go plugins on Windows? What is basically the Go plugin state? Eventually, if there are some plans for future when we could expect some solution for the Windows problem, so that we at least have a better picture and put that information in the cap towards the place where you said that it is currently not supported on Windows, so that we at least provide information what it is or how far it is from being supportable.
Okay, I could look into that.
Yeah, that would be nice, and we would at least be able to point people to the future.
And yeah, I guess one final question, Seth. We removed this functionality from Customize. Is this something that's okay to spend a bit of time to work out? Are you guys in a good spot now and just want it back in for the convenience, or is this you're broken?
I'm not broken because I could lock into a previous version, but I can't upgrade. So any of the new bug fixes or new features, I can't use them right now. I think that's the case for anyone who is using commands, which was a big pull to to using Customize in the first place.
This issue has a lot of upvotes. People were using this feature.
Okay, well, that's great to know that people were using the feature. I assume just running the commands before running Customize is has some disadvantages, or is there's a reason that that's not a solution for you?
Because I want to build to just run Customize build and not have to implement other tooling around it. It's kind of counterproductive. And then a lot of other people had issues with actually decrypting things on disk versus Customize doing it in memory and then just piping that straight to kubectl apply or something like that.
Okay, that's super helpful.
I think like Helm has something like that. Like there's like a hook where you could decrypt all your files and then run apply and then run another tool to re-encrypt everything. But like during that time, it's decrypted on disk. And if you're running it on like a CI or I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
That doesn't really bother me that much. I just want to I want to just be able to use customize build and have everything like declared in the file and not have to. I don't want to have to like do something else to make customize work.
Right. You don't want to go back to writing a script.
Yeah. Basically.
Okay.
We never said that this will be the final call for this approach, so we'll just iterate on this, have this functionality as the current state, and then we will see how people feel about it and what can be done further.
We may even be able to just reintroduce it into Kustomize as it was and just make sure it isn't in kube control, like kube control passes in an argument where it's disabled or something.
Yeah, that's also possible. Yeah, I was actually chatting with Jingfang earlier about the cutting the functionality of the customize that we have in the CLI runtime just to the core functionality. And in that case, customize itself would be just having more functionality than the one from kubectl customize.
All right, awesome. Sorry about that. All right, we got two more things, but you don't need to do mine.
I was actually going to ask Ahmed about the crew plugin manager, because I'm pretty sure that this is a bigger topic. Are you okay with us pushing that to the next meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Cool. That would be awesome. And I'm pretty sure that field topic can be also moved to the next meeting. As for Mateusz, I'm pretty sure that we can fit him in the stand-up. So I'll let him do the talking, and then we will continue with others stand-ups.
Okay, so great. Hi all, Mateusz here. So I've added this point to the agenda, and it's the information about the pull request. And the background is that about 2 months ago, I created an issue for kubectl dump command, and I also submitted pull requests for it, which is solving that. I tried to get some attention on Slack channel, but I wasn't so lucky. And maybe just in a nutshell, if you execute the kubectl cluster dump command with the namespace flag, then only the list of the nodes are dumped. Other information like services, pods are not available. And it's quite simple fix, and it was introduced by a mistake during one of the refactoring phase. So I also added the proper test coverage for it. And thanks to that, we never regress. And I think the review shouldn't take too much time, but I don't know what to do to push it forward.
A good advice is to probably ping people directly. You can definitely get me on Slack. I'm probably very close to you, and definitely in the same time zone. So I will be able to help you with those and get them pushed forward. If you don't see my name on your PR by tomorrow, please ping me on Slack and remind me about that one, and okay. I'll have a look at it.
Great, thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any stand-up topics? Okay, so for myself, I'm working on fixing kubectl explain. That is with regards to the Open API PR for CRDs. Currently open kubectl explain if you target a CRD from the PR specifically, because so far we are not publishing Open API for CRD. So if you do use CRD and the explain kubectl explain panics, I'm trying to figure out what is actually not working correctly there. I think I have a working solution, that PR will be actually replaced by a different one, which will have a proper fix. The current fix in that PR that I linked is only temporary. Okay, so with that, we'll be closing the meeting. Thank you all for joining our call, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.